Good morning and Happy New Year. I'm Paul Gordon and this is the Peorian. For decades now, Caterpillar has been the economic driver of Central Illinois. Since its humble beginning 101 years ago, Caterpillar has become to Peoria what, well, frankly, I'm not sure what I could compare it with. And despite the diversity that has occurred in the local economy since the late 1980s, including the tremendous growth in health services in that time, there is little question that Cat remains the top dog in the region. That's bound to be the case when you have a Fortune 50 company in your front yard. Many know that Caterpillar was the darling of Wall Street during this most recent and devastating recession. Why? I mean, Caterpillar is considered a cyclical company that is supposed to suffer in a bad economy when demand for its product goes down as orders get postponed. Instead, the company sustained a loss in only one quarter during the recession, and now it's back up in record profits territory again, largely because of the strategy it had in place when that recession hit. The architect of that strategy was Doug Oberhelman, who is now chairman and CEO of Caterpillar. He's my guest today, and we're going to discuss the company's future as we head into a new year, including how its own diversity will help it continue to grow. That's right after these messages. Welcome back to the Peorian. My guest today is Doug Oberhelman, chairman and CEO of Caterpillar Incorporated. Thank you for joining us today, Doug.
Glad to be here, Paul.
I know the SEC rules prohibit you from talking about anything from the fourth quarter report or year-end report, including, of course, your official 2012 outlook. But the preliminary outlook, which was part of the third quarter report, it forecasts continued sales and profit growth in the coming year, correct?
That's right. And we put out a preliminary outlook at the end of the third quarter, as you said, in October. And we said sales for 2011 should be about $58 billion, which will be an all-time record for our company in history. We're all proud of that. And then we said in 2012, sales and revenues would be up 10 to 20% above that, which will be another record of all records in Caterpillar history, and everybody feels good about that.
Can you tell us how much of that growth and all future growth that you're talking about is connected to the company's strategic decision to get more involved in the mining industry? You were already involved, but you've increased the involvement.
Yeah, the mining industry is important, has been important to Caterpillar for many, many years, and we've been a leading supplier of primarily mining trucks to worldwide mines. With our acquisition of Bucyrus last year, we added virtually 3/4 of all mobile equipment in open pit surface mines. And that should add, several $billion more as Bucyrus sales come into ours in 2012. So mining is important for us, but it's still not as important as all of the rest of our businesses combined. It's just one of many of our pieces that we're working on so that over time, as the world continues to grow, we're there with a footprint servicing the infrastructure development of demands of people that are going to come over time.
In my opening segment, I talked about how Caterpillar was able to survive the recession. Only one quarter there's only one quarter in which you had a loss. Why? How did that happen? What was the strategy that enabled you to overcome the recession?
Well, I give tremendous credit to my predecessor, Jim Owens, and a team he put together way back in 2003 that came up with something beautifully called, or elegantly called, the trough strategy, I guess. And of course, in 2003, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, nobody wanted to talk about a trough because things were booming. We were going great guns. We couldn't keep up with demand. We were hiring people left and right. Nobody wanted to talk about the trough. But we forced planning. We forced every division in our entire company to really think hard about what happens if and when a trough hits. We've been in a series of cyclical businesses for all of Caterpillar history. Everybody knows that. And thinking back to the early 90s and the early 80s, things were bloody, and we knew it was going to happen again. And sure enough, it did. But we really made every division leader go through a systematic and very deliberate planning process for their business in the event of a 20 to 30% downturn in business. In fact, the Great Recession of '09 was 40% for Caterpillar. Decline of, you'll remember, 52 billion, 51 billion to 32 billion in sales in 1 year. It was brutal. So when we saw that start to happen in September of 2008, the famous Merrill Lynch weekend, we started to pull what we call trough triggers. And by March, April of 09, we were in full trough mode. We kept our credit rating, we maintained our dividend, we made money. But it was tremendously painful and traumatic on our leadership team because we had to take severe actions that nobody wanted to take, but we had to survive.
Have other companies asked Caterpillar what the model was?
We get that question all the time, and it's a favorite speech of mine to give on how to plan through a trough because we really, I think we executed that beautifully, and we are so much stronger today as a result. And as I just said, 58 billion this year, up 10 to 20% next year. The quality of our numbers are great. We're meeting higher demands. And all that set us up coming out with a strong balance sheet. So when we bought Bucyrus, we bought MWM, we bought EMD locomotives, we had the cash to do it. And we only did that because we survived so well through that downturn.
And Caterpillar is hiring right now, too.
We are hiring and have been hiring. And in fact, through the third quarter, we talked about adding 30,000 people since the beginning of the recovery, which going back to early 10. 12,000 or so of those in the United States, American workers. And I don't think a lot of companies are doing that. No. We are extremely proud of that.
China was a big part of the strategy, or well, China wasn't part of the strategy. It's just that demand in China was also a big part of the recovery.
Well, a little bit of both, actually, because it is a big piece of our strategy. Okay. And as China develops and essentially the Chinese population moves from rural to urban, they want to live like this. They want lights and heat and all the things that the rest of us want. That really pulls the demand for infrastructure spending, which we do. So, in fact, China was a big piece of our success in 09 and 10 because China really didn't see a slowdown. And we could use that to help our business around the world. And so China is a very important player to the world today. In fact, I would say that China and the U.S. are intertwined deeply these days.
Okay. When we come back, we're going to talk about doing business in Illinois. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Peorian. I'm with Doug Oberhelman, Chairman and CEO of Caterpillar. Doug, in the past year, Illinois lawmakers have done a couple things to make it a little bit more difficult to do business in the state, including raising corporate income taxes, and more recently, failing to extend the tax credits for research and development, which is a big issue, of course, for a company that spends $1 billion a year on research and development in Illinois. That one appears to be resolved. You've gotten another extension. But are there other things that the state should be doing, should be doing to help businesses within the state to create jobs?
Well, I've been somewhat vocal on this the last year and have had some luck, I think, awakening the state to the environment we find. But, you know, we've announced a half a dozen or more new plant sites over the last year in the United States. We just opened a big new 350,000 square foot facility down in North Carolina. We've added 2 facilities in the state of Texas, and I can go on and on and on. And Illinois is not on that list. And you have to, I think, as a leader in Illinois, say, why isn't it on that list? Certainly the insolvency we face and have faced in Illinois is a big piece of that. Spending is out of control and has been. We did see the big personal and corporate income tax hike last year. That's not what you do if you attract business. And in fact, I think statistics show today that job creation stopped at about the time that tax increase went through in Illinois. So I think that all of us in Illinois have some obligation to, one, get to the ballot box. I mean, we're the ones that have, I guess, created the legislative environment we have in Illinois. And if we like this, this is what we're going to have. But it's very difficult to bring new jobs to Illinois. Workers' compensation, we talked about that last year. There was some reform. It basically didn't change a thing. We have 2 engine plants, I've told this story before, one in Indiana and one in Illinois. Virtually the same footprint, same number of people. Our workers' comp costs in Illinois are 7 times higher for the same injury than they are in Indiana.
Wow.
One example. Unemployment compensation, another one. Rates are very, very high in Illinois. Tort and the reform of the judicial system in Illinois always comes up. Mm-hmm. The fact that the budget is not balanced, and every day we spend more than we take in. All that's going to lead to some either further tax increase down the road or something we're not going to like. So we go and look at other states who are very open about this. Some states don't have any income tax. Some states workers' comp are very low. So it just, the sum of all these things added together means we in Illinois have got some work to do in terms of being competitive.
The company has announced it's going to build a new plant in the United States. Despite all that, Illinois has not been ruled out, correct?
That's right. In fact, I was proud of Illinois because the day we announced that, we heard from Illinois right away.
Oh.
And that's new, and that's different. Having said that, they face all the things I just talked about. But let's talk about the plant a little bit, because this is something I think every Caterpillar person should feel good about, every American should feel good about. These are tractors that we have made in Japan since the early 60s, D3, D4, D5, small bulldozers, and what we call mini excavators, say under 8-ton excavators, the little guys. And most of that market is here in the United States, and most of that market in the United States is along the East Coast corridor. Mm-hmm. So for the first time in the history that we have made a since 1960s, we're bringing the D345 to the United States and moving that production here. And these will be American jobs, about 1,400 of them inside our facility. It's a big plant when we get it done. And that will lead on to creation of many other jobs, of course, around with suppliers and ancillary jobs and so on. So it's a classic American job expansionary tale, and one I feel really good about.
How soon will we get an announcement on where that plant is going to go?
Well, sometime in the first quarter we'll have that done. We have a very deliberate process today, and Illinois is in that process mm-hmm. and has raised their hand, and so have probably 15 other states or so. So there's a lot of active interest in that. Canada and Mexico have also sent us a letter and are working with us. So it'll be a very interesting process, but it'll be a little bit before we make a decision.
Okay. We're going to take a break now for messages from our sponsors. But first, here is the Peorian's own Kevin Kaiser to talk about what's going on in the literary and culinary world.
Happy New Year's Day. Honestly, I can't believe you're up this early. If you have a hangover like I do, you have my sympathies. But what makes mine probably worse is the fact that this show's not live and we're recording it on a Tuesday afternoon in December. So, it's New Year's Day and I'm going to give you a couple literary-based movies perfect for a long day of laziness and detoxifying. First off, The Last Time I Committed Suicide. I know, starting off on a positive note, but don't let the title fool you. This movie is a lightly fictionalized account of the beat life of Neil Cassidy in the 1940s. The name Cassidy might be familiar as he was the real-life inspiration for writers like Jack Kerouac, Allen Ginsberg, Ken Kesey, and Tom Wolfe. This movie came out in 1997 and stars Thomas Jane as Neil, Keanu Reeves as his friend Harry, and a young Adrian Brody as an Allen Ginsberg-esque character named Ben. It also stars Claire Forlani, Gretchen Mol, and legendary punk rocker and Illinois native John Doe. The script is based on an actual letter Cassidy sent to Kerouac about working in a tire yard and chasing women around Denver. Now our second choice is Pollock, with Ed Harris starring as American artist Jackson Pollock and Marcia Gay Harden as Lee Krasner. Like our previous film, this one talks about life in the 40s, except instead of working in a tire yard and chasing women, Pollock is finding his voice as an artist and chasing women. Oh, and drinking too. Nice little tie-in. You've probably heard of this one as it was up for several awards and was critically acclaimed, which means no one really saw it in the theater, so there's a decent chance you haven't seen it. Today's your day, my friend. Now our third and final movie, Where the Buffalo Roam, starring Bill Murray and Peter Boyle from 1980. This was the first movie to take on the life and times of Hunter S. Thompson. Murray plays the role of Hunter while Boyle plays his co-conspirator and legal counsel, Laszlo, aka Oscar Acosta. In this film, Hunter attempts to cover both the '72 presidential campaign and the Super Bowl in his typical drug-crazed fashion, while Laszlo attempts to keep them both out of jail in his typical drug-crazed fashion. So there you go, movies for a lazy New Year's Day. And you know what? Why not a little hair of the dog? Dr. Blanton's Amber Restorative. Ah, there you go. Happy 2012.
We're back talking about Caterpillar with its chairman and CEO, Doug Oberhelman. Doug, before the break, we were talking about jobs, job creation. One of the things that you've talked a lot about recently, especially, is skills. The kind of skills that Caterpillar needs in its plants right now are not being taught in the schools. Isn't that right?
Well, what's going on, there's a lot of things happening. When I grew up, all my friends were farm kids. And a lot of farm kids worked on their tractors, they worked on their farm equipment with their dad, and they were pretty well prepared to go to work in factories or go to work on diesel engines or whatever it was. Today, those don't exist anymore. There just really aren't any farm kids. So the mechanical aptitudes that we need and our distributors need to repair our equipment are more sophisticated than ever, and there's a gap between what kids are seeing around the world, and this applies in China, the US, almost anywhere, because everybody today, as you know, is growing up with a joystick or a television screen. And that's where we're headed with our equipment. So we've got an exceeding amount of work to do with adapting skills from schools that we get to what we need to do in our factories. And I'll tell you a little story right now. And I was recently in Detroit, and I asked our distributor what was his single biggest challenge in Michigan, state of Michigan, a lot of problems. 50 open spots for diesel technicians.
Wow.
50. So we did a little survey around the country, and at that time, this is a month or two, 6 weeks old, there were 300 openings right then for diesel technicians. We used to call them diesel mechanics. But it's a pretty sophisticated job these days because the engines are all electronic, the tractor's all computerized, and it's a fairly good job. But there are 300 available essentially right now, and they can't get them. And we've spent a lot of time with community colleges. We have over 20 programs around the world with community colleges where we've actually donated Caterpillar equipment, just like here at ICC. We have a diesel school over there. And once a student or a young person gets through that program, they're guaranteed a job at a Caterpillar dealer somewhere. It's been very, very successful. We just need to do more of it.
I want to switch gears here. The new visitor center. It's less than a year away from completion. Are you getting excited about it? Is all of Caterpillar getting excited about it?
We're really excited. You know, we watched, and I came to Peoria and Caterpillar in 1975, and that Sears block was a bustling place over there then. And we watched it deteriorate, and finally go dark, and then turn into a hole in the ground for the last decade or so. So to watch out of our offices over there in our building and look down and see the museum come alive and our visitor center come alive is really exciting. We have thousands and thousands of visitors through here every year, and we really don't have a good receiving place for them. This will be it. So they'll have a chance to see our visitor center. They'll have the museum right next door. It's going to change downtown life substantially, and something that everybody's going to like and be proud of around town.
What took so long for Caterpillar to build one?
Well, we were waiting on a museum. We did not want to build a visitor center there with 3/4 of that block as a hole in the ground. So as soon as the museum went through and that happened and that started developing, we were ready to go.
But why? I guess I'm just kind of surprised Caterpillar did not have some kind of a visitor center years ago.
Yeah, we talked about it, and it's a good question, and it just hadn't happened. And this, I think, by waiting and seeing the way this is going to turn out, I'm glad we didn't, because this is going to help Caterpillar, and I think be something Peoria will really like when we get done.
Does the visitor center, as well as the multi-million-dollar investments that the company has already made or announced for East Peoria and Decatur, are those signs of the company's continued commitment to Central Illinois?
Oh, I think so. I mean, we announced some $100 million investments in East Peoria in a couple of our big plants there. Decatur, we're turning that into a mining truck headquarters for the world, hundreds of millions of dollars of investments. Those will be our source plants for a long time to come in mining. The visitor center certainly helps us here, but you know, I get asked this all the time, and yeah, our intent, and we want to stay in Illinois. But at some point, does it get so bad where you have to leave? Some others are questioning that today. I hope it doesn't get that way. Illinois is every state's a dynamic place. And right now we're going through some hard times, and I believe better times will come down the road, and this won't be the subject it is. But boy, right now it's tough to see through sometimes.
Yeah. The Museum Square we already talked about, but then there's the Pier Marquette project, which is apparently finally getting underway. Caterpillar has long been a supporter of the Pier Marquette.
Yeah.
Rooms set aside that Caterpillar paid for, etc. Is the new project something that Caterpillar can support?
We do support it. We will support it. We really need that hotel, a nice hotel downtown. Even in its darkest days, people still wanted to stay at the Pier Marquette because it was right there. They could walk down to us. It's 2 blocks away from our headquarters. And there's a lot of romanticism involved with the Pier Marquette over a long period of history for Caterpillar and for Peoria. So I'm very optimistic about it. We've been involved with some of the planning through that, so they know what we'd like to have. The connection to the convention center will help us all, and that's something we can use down the road that we have not had. So it's got to go, and it'll be a great addition to Peoria.
Okay. Doug, thank you for
Paul.
joining us today.
Good to be with you.
We hope you enjoyed the show as well, which can be seen in its entirety on our website, thepeorian.com.
Ooh.